Hello and welcome to another edition of Sunday Night Soccer. I'm here with my man Mike D. It's not Sunday though; we're live on Monday, Mother's Day edition. How you been, Mike D?
I'm good, man. I 4 games this weekend. It's been nonstop coaching for about 7 days straight. Today I finally get a day off.
Nothing
So
says Mother's Day like 4
no,
soccer
man.
games.
Isn't bro? If anyone's a coach out there or in the soccer world in the United States, I swear this is the longest 2 months. April and May are the longest 2 months as far as you're traveling every weekend. You are not home. Like you're coaching at night. Like your schedule is just chaotic. Like
Yeah,
it's just there's no breaks in between. And which I listen. I'm not even complaining when I'm coaching. I'm in heaven. But it's the before and after that it kind of annoys me. You
yeah,
know what
yeah.
I'm
Well,
saying?
and games get canceled because of the weather, so then they all
Oh
get
yeah,
rescheduled and things get
yeah.
all messed up. And yeah, it's crazy. So, special Mother's Day edition, like we said, coming to you for your commute on Monday evening. So, got a lot of things to go over this week. We'll get straight into it if you're ready, Mike D.
Yeah, let's do it, man.
Champions League final is all set. We'll talk about it here in a second. Barcelona just yesterday won El Clasico. We'll talk about that a little bit more in
That was
depth.
a game. Yeah.
That was a heck of a game. And FA Cup final is set. Xabi Alonso is leaving Bayer Leverkusen. They just announced that. Mbappe, although they lost, did set a Madrid scoring record this year. And the Women's World Cup was just announced that they're expanding to 48 teams, but not until 2031.
Very nice.
That'll be interesting. So, like we just said, the Champions League final is set. Inter Milan and PSG. I got to admit, you did pick it. Those were your teams, correct?
PSG was Inter Milan. No, I
I
thought Inter Milan. No, I said they were going to win. I didn't want them to win. I didn't want PSG to beat Arsenal either.
Yeah, I didn't either.
But I just the way that PSG plays, I just think there's I don't know. They manage games extremely well. I just felt like they had this kind of confidence in the way they were dictating games. I didn't think anyone was going to be able to beat them. But Inter Milan, listen. They scored almost just as brilliant goals as Arsenal. Not as quite.
Yeah.
But they are. Your hat's got to come off to Inter Milan. They played phenomenal too. So it's not as sexy as Barcelona. You know,
no, but
it's going to be a great game.
Yeah, it'll still be a good game nonetheless. We'll talk a little bit more about the Champions League here later on tonight, and that will be May 31st. So we'll have a couple weeks off to prepare for that. And again, a reminder: the final is just one game. So these other, rounds were 2 legs, home and away. One final, that's it. May 31st, Inter Milan and PSG. So looking forward to that. All right, with that being said, Mike D, why don't you take us to England as we round up some of the standings? Liverpool's won the league, but what else is going on?
Yeah, so again, English Premier League has been awarded top 5 now. Teams are going into the Champions League, this is new this year. Is that correct? It's new this year? This is a new edition?
Yeah, I think so, yes. Yeah, it's them and La Liga.
La Liga, because they've had the most teams from their league. Is that what that was?
They had the most success, so they had the better record once the Champions League started this year. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's kind of like a wild card spot.
No, got it. So that 5th spot now becomes advantageous. And I don't know if there's any money attached to the 5th spot, but the 1 through 4, there's money attached to it. So Arsenal is in 2nd place. But if you look at their record, the past 5 games, they've only had 1 win, lost 1, and they've tied 3. If you look at their ties throughout the season, they have 14 ties throughout the season. So they had 68 points. Newcastle in 3rd place, who had a big win this weekend, with 66 points. Man City in 4th place, who was on a great streak. 4 out of the last 5 have been wins. They tied this weekend, which was a quite boring game. But hats off to who was the team that just packed the box and played a really I watched that game.
I didn't watch. It was 0-0, I believe, right?
It was 0-0. No, and they did a great job.
Someone in a relegation zone, right? It was a Southampton, maybe? Was it Southampton?
Maybe. I don't know, but whoever was, the crowd went nuts, and it was awesome to watch.
Yeah, it was
typical American soccer fans right now.
Yeah,
talking to you about it. And then Chelsea in 5th spot. They suffered a loss this weekend, and then Aston Villa right behind them was 63. So the 5th spot, 6th spot, and 7th spot, you had Chelsea, Aston Villa, and Nottingham Forest. Chelsea and Aston Villa was 63, and Nottingham Forest was 62. So still a lot of things that can happen. Man City with the 4th spot. I don't think anything will be changing 4th and 3rd. I think maybe they might duel it out, but yeah, we'll see what happens.
The 5th spot will be exciting. Yeah, absolutely. So still a lot to play for with 2 games left in the Premier League. So moving on to Italy.
Serie A, we have Napoli in first place now. In the last 5, they have won 4 and tied 1, so they're undefeated in the last 5. Inter Milan with 77 points. They are in 2nd place, and then they have Atalanta with 68 points, and then Juventus and Lazio in 4th and 5th place with 64 points, and then Roma with 63 points, Bologna with 62 points, and AC Milan with 60 points. So that race for the 4 is still somewhat open. Some things can happen. If you look at AC Milan, my AC Milan and Christian Pulisic got a great win on Friday. But that was for the Super on Friday.
Well, that was a league game. Yeah,
that was a league game. Okay,
so it was a big win. I mean, there's still a chance. They're saying there's a chance. So
hey, I'm with it. So they are in 8th place with 60 points, but again, only 2 points behind the 7th, 3 points behind the 6th, and 4 points behind that 4th spot. So Serie A. See, a lot of the times you get a lot of criticizing for these leagues over in Europe being predictable. This is pretty exciting stuff coming down the stretch, at least from EPL and Serie A.
And the winner in Italy is still up for grabs. Between some of the leagues have kind of already been decided, but there in Italy, there's still a battle to see who's going to win. So over to Spain with La Liga. So Barcelona, real quick, they need 2 points from their last 3 games, and they will win the league.
So they pretty much secured.
Almost,
I feel like La Liga. Yeah, they're Liverpool in a sense. They had a huge win over Real Madrid, which that game could have gone either way.
That game could have ended up like 8-7.
Oh man, it was a great game. Mbappe could have had 4.
Yeah.
But Barcelona has won the last 5 of 5. Real Madrid has lost, has won 4 of the last 5. So no surprise there. Barcelona in top with 82 points. Real Madrid in 2nd with 75 points. Atletico Madrid in 3rd place with 70 points, and then it just goes boom.
Yeah.
And that's just everything going lower. Athletic Club was 64 points. Villarreal was 61. Real Betis was 60. Again, but this is the top 5 to go on. So Villarreal and Real Betis are in fighting contention, because after Real Betis, it goes to Celta Vigo, which has 49 points. So it drops off pretty considerably.
But that 5th spot, again, still up for grabs in Spain. So, again, Barcelona need 2 points. So, mathematically, it's still not a done deal, but it's pretty much close. If 2 ties, or if they get 1 win out of their 3 games left, they will win the league. And now to Germany, the Bundesliga.
Germany. Bayern Munich in first place the past 30 years in a row.
And they have won the league.
Yes. And they've won the league. Leverkusen in 2nd place. Big news there with who's the departure there?
Xabi Alonso.
Yeah, that's right. With 68 points, and then it goes
Eintracht Frankfurt.
Eintracht Frankfurt with 57 points, SC Freiburg with 55 points, and then Dortmund with 54 points, which is on a tear. So if you look at 3 through 5, they are undefeated in the last 5 games. So some competitive games going on there. Again, the top 4 matters for money and Champions League here. 6th place Mainz and RB Leipzig with 51. Yeah.
Sorry,
Dortmund still has a chance somehow. They had a terrible season. And I don't even – is Gio Rey not even playing anymore?
Not very much. Not very much. But they still have a chance for that 4th Champions League spot. Yep. So now to the women's side, Mike D. For Mother's Day, NWSL.
The NWSL, we have KC Current in first place with 18 points. Orlando Pride in 2nd place with 16 points. And then Washington Spirit in 3rd place with 15 points. And then 4th and 5th point, you have San Diego Wave and Angel City FC. And then you had the Portland Thorns in 6th place with 13. So very tight. Still very competitive. Yeah. Still early in the season. KC Current had a strong start, but they have lost 2 out of the last 5.
Yeah.
No one's really trending. If you're looking at this on YouTube right now and the visual that we have up, you can see that it's still very much great parity as far as who's winning. There's not a telltale of who's going to win each game. And so having good parity in the league, especially as new as the NWSL, is great. So each game is competitive,
Yep. And moving on now to the MLS, our domestic league, my man.
MLS looks like Cincinnati and Columbus, Ohio for the win. How nice is that?
Yeah.
Look at
tied right now.
So for first place, 25 points each, Cincinnati and Columbus. Right below them is Philadelphia, 23. And then Inter Miami. I don't know if you saw the trash talking by Minnesota after their win,
Yeah,
but
they did.
Minnesota had a post that's saying pink phonies they put
Yeah.
on X. And then David Beckham responded saying, have class in your victory or something like that. David Beckham, you have the best players in the world. Do better. Nashville in 5th place with 20 points. And Charlotte FC, who was at the top, now standing in 6th place. And then New York Red Bull in 7th place. Orlando City in 8th place. And then 9th and 10th place is 17 points. So, again, great parity going on in the MLS East. On the West, Vancouver seems to be the stronghold, but they are not in the same commanding lead that they once were. So if you've been watching the show, they were 10 points ahead at some point in the beginning of this, and Vancouver took a commanding lead, but now they are followed closely by Minnesota with 22 points, Portland Timbers with 21 points, San Diego FC, the expansion team, with 20 points standing in 4th place, and then Seattle Sounders with 19, LAFC, San Jose, Austin, Colorado, and FC Dallas all with 16 points. So again, great parity. What I'm excited to say, so this is an American soccer show, so I do want to keep advocating domestically. Parity is great here. And when we are having the same schedule as the English Premier League in La Liga, the more I think about this, and Serie A and all the powerhouse leagues, this is going to be great for the MLS. This is going to put us in a whole, when we're talking same time frame as them, it's going to mean a whole different thing.
I like the fact, I don't know about you, but I like that there's some new teams in the West. You know, it's not the same old. That, you know, Vancouver kind of came out of nowhere. Minnesota's definitely a surprise.
Yeah.
After the last few years, so it's kind of nice to see some new teams up there at the top. And then San Diego is the expansion team, and they're still holding on pretty strong, you know, for their first season. So I think that's all pretty good to see.
And so, and this is what I do want to say. So before you get over to the stats, Jay, is remember how young the MLS is with the history. What you're starting to see is some actual great product starting to happen for the MLS. And I feel like the first time in its existence, and you're starting to see things really start to shape up. So we're at the very beginning of these meaningful games and these meaningful league play games.
Rivalries,
rivalries and things, right, and things of that nature. And so you get to be part of that as a fan. And so part of this show is dedicated making sure that we do pay homage to what's happening in the States and then encouraging fandom. So pay attention to these teams. Jay is going to go over through the stats, and so what players to watch for. But if you're looking at these leagues, I mean, there's a lot. There's stories being written all over the place.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing I heard the other day on something I was watching, that someone said, you know, you can't manufacture that. You know, you can't. You know, like your Knicks, right? They have a history of, you know, 50, 60 years or whatever in the NBA, and they have these storied rivalries because they went through the playoffs against such and such, and you can't just manufacture that. It takes time, right? You know what I mean? Like,
well, Jay, that's the whole thing that we've talked about how many times. That
San Diego FC doesn't have a big, huge rival because it's their first year they've ever had a professional team, and we talk a lot about teams in Spain and England. All these things have been around for 120 years.
And you got to think about the generational gap. If you think about sports in the beginning in America, right? You had parents and sports becoming new to America and professional sports becoming bigger and more polarizing in America. You probably had grandparents that decided to be fans of these teams. It was a new wave. It was something happening. Well, from that, grandparents, you're now talking great-great-grandparents that had that, you know, they were on the new wave of sports coming to America. This generation now is responsible for creating that next wave. So if they've never been introduced to new, it's like, for me, being a New Yorker and being from New York, I was told who I was, part of my culture, who I rooted for. Yankees, Knicks, Giants, Rangers. They didn't have a soccer, and it's still that way. New York City FC by default is becoming my soccer team because they're opening a stadium in Queens. But it's really hard to say that because it was New York, New Jersey Red Bulls in the beginning. New York City FC was an expansion team, whatever, years ago. But my point is, like, I have to choose to invest in this, and I have to choose to pay attention. And I think with other sports being so polarizing already, it is a choice. It's a conscious effort if I want to see soccer grow. But the more I'm starting to pay attention, and this is what I'm trying to say, the more I'm starting to pay attention, the easier it's getting. Like I am actually starting to fall in love with some of these storylines. Like it is getting more competitive, and I like what's going on.
All right. Oh, before we get into the stats, we have some breaking news, Mike D. Carlo Ancelotti just this afternoon was announced he will be coaching Brazil.
What?
Leaving Real Madrid and coaching Brazil's national team. This just in, folks. You heard it here on Straight from the Training Ground, Sunday Night Soccer.
Why?
Can't make this stuff up. Apparently, he wants to coach Brazil. I don't know. We'll try to get him on here.
All right,
Eric,
let's dissect
Eric,
this
if you're listening, get Carlo Ancelotti on here. We'll talk to him at the end of the show.
But let's dissect that, Jay. You know the international job is extremely difficult. Brazil
totally
has been
different.
under fire the past decade as far as shitting the bed and not being the Brazil of old. You have Ronaldinho criticizing them. You have Kaká criticizing them.
There aren't too many international jobs with much more pressure than Brazil.
Exactly my point. And they're in a downward spiral, and you're at Real Madrid that has the most championship wins. You have Mbappe at the helm, a young Mbappe, considered one of the best players. That is a peculiar move. The only thing I can think of is you're not working as much.
Yeah, different schedule. Maybe he just needs a change of scenery. You know, who knows? But I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit more next week. But yeah, so Carlo Ancelotti to coach Brazil. So
interesting.
All right, so moving on here to our goals and stats. MLS leaders, Arango again still leading. As we talked about before, MLS still in the early goings. So still early in the season. But Christian Arango still leading in goals with 8.
Say the team name, San Diego Earthquake, is because this is what people need to understand.
Yeah,
like where the stars are. Yeah,
Hugo Cypers with your sort of beloved, or your little attachment, I guess, to the Chicago Fire with 8. Baribo with Philadelphia Union with 8. Ojeda with a bunch of people tied with 7. Ojeda, Evander, Maxim Choupo-Moting, Diego Luna. And then you got Diego Rossi from the Columbus Crew with 6, Carlos Gil with New England Revolution with 6, and Sam Surridge with Nashville with 6. So only 2 goals separating the top goal scorers right now and the 10th goal scorer. But as we go on through the season, as we all know, sure that will change. So keep up to date.
Jay, before we move forward, what I'm curious, when you look at these positions of these players, right? Majority of them are center forwards. You have some attacking midfielders and you have some wingers on there.
Yeah.
What do you think that says about a center forward? When their position is a center forward, I think of a true 9. I think of a target player. Is that what we're talking about? Like a tall target player here, or are we looking at more athletic target players?
I don't know about that as much as when I think of that or see that, I think that they must have a good supporting cast around them, that they're getting some service. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you're a winger, you're probably creating a lot more things on your own, kind of more like a, not to draw comparisons, but, like a Rafinha kind of guy, as a winger. Whereas your boy Harry Kane is more of a true center forward.
Yes, exactly right.
Harry Kane's not going to dribble. I'm saying that sarcastically.
Okay, good. Very good.
He's not going to, Harry Kane's not going to probably dribble 5 people from the halfway line and score a goal. I don't imagine.
Yeah.
But if you give him good service and balls in the box, he can score some goals.
I would be interested to look up some of these guys' height and see where they're at, because that's one thing as I'm developing players and talking, and as we're getting to the next level, especially with an MLS Next team coming to Grand Rapids, is positionally based on athleticism. And it's something that you're always kind of aware of. Like, right, you have an understanding of what a center back's going to look like, what a winger looks like. Like there's certain characteristics that you can just tell. Right.
Not too many MLS center backs are like 5'8", is what you're saying.
Correct.
Yeah.
But
Diego Rossi might be, but not a center back.
So I have a striker that I've coached for the past 5 years. That all of a sudden is 6 foot. He's only 13 years old.
Yeah.
And he's always had a pure, he was always a pure striker, meaning he can just strike the ball from wherever and find the center of that ball and hit it pure. Right?
Yeah.
He could finish like no other, and he's left-footed, and now he's also developed the right. So I've always had him up top as a pure striker that came into a false nine because he's big. Well, next year he's moving to MLS Next, away from me. Which the way that this was done, I want coaches to understand this. The way that this was done is exactly the way it's done. I encourage him trying to advance his career. If his parents think MLS Next is going to help him, and he thinks that's going to help him get to that next level, as in the name it should, right? MLS Next sounds like you're promising I'm going to be the next person in the MLS, where we all know that this is marketing ploys, whatever. But if that's the network that you get to be seen at, to where that might propel you to get to that next level, and even if that's college or whatever it might be, I am in support of it. I am in support of coaches working together to do what's best for the player, period. Do I have to take my ego out of it? Absolutely. I'm not going to sit here and lie and say, no, I think I know what's best for him. I've had him for 6 years. I know how to continue to develop him. That's not true. That is not true because, first of all, I did have interest in him what coach was going to coach him next. And I happen to know the coach that he's going to next. And I played with the coach that he's going to next. So I know he's in good hands. But that also went when he was going through this decision, parents and the player were completely transparent with me, asking me, what do I look for? I was like, talk to.
Are you there? We lost Mike D temporarily. Hopefully we can get him back. So until then, we'll move on here to the Premier League. Top goal scorers again, Mo Salah running away with everything. Having an unbelievable season for Liverpool with 28 goals. Mbappe right behind him. He had a hat trick yesterday, so 27 goals. Harry Kane with 25. Lewandowski's been out for a few games, but still on 25 goals. Redigue, 24. Isak, 23. Erling Haaland, Dembele, and Marmoush all on 21. And Girassi on 20. Moving along to assists. Salah, no surprise again, still leading in assists, 18. Elise, though, right behind him with 17. Lamine Yamal with 14. Wirtz with 13. Marmoush, 12. Jacob Murphy with 12 for Newcastle. Bukayo Saka and Rafinha, Barcolo and Pulisic all tied with 11, rounding out the top 10 in Europe and in assists, rather. And as we try to get Mike D back here momentarily, we'll move on to clean sheets. So clean sheets. I think we have him back. There we go.
Did you, was that me?
You just totally froze up. Yeah, I don't know where you went. I tried to get, you were on here, but I don't know what happened. Sorry.
No, that's okay. I thought, did I have a cool face as when I froze, or?
It was kind of like this. So I deleted you as soon as I could, and I went on to the full screen, and we tried to make it work.
Where was I at in my rant? I feel like I want to finish my story, but should I just stop now?
No, we can carry on. I moved on through the stats where you were trying to get you back. I think what you were talking about, what I heard from everything, is that it's a very, well, we'll talk about more, the parents and the player being transparent with you and asking you to be transparent. But what I took away from that the most is that's exactly why kids should play different positions until after puberty.
Boom. You're 100%. So this
because you never know.
Yeah. So here's my point is, so the guy, so at MLS Next, I'm talking to his coach. I'm like, okay, so you're going to have him next year. Like, what are you looking at him in what role? He goes, I'm actually looking at him as a center back. And he's been my top goal scorer for the past 4 or 5 years on my team. So rather than immediately transitioning him there, because I already had center backs, I did have a need at CDM. And one of the knocks on him developmentally was tackling, right? Learning how to tackle it and kind of his energy.
Well, we don't know what's going on. We apologize for our technical difficulties, but we'll go back and cover clean sheets. Goalkeepers around Europe. Merritt and Oblak and Svilar still tied at 15. So tight race for the top spot with clean sheets here as we come down to the end of the season. Gulaxi with 14. We have a handful tied on 13 again, all the way down with Sells from Nottingham Forest. Manuel Neuer and Summer round out the top 10 with 12 clean sheets. So, again, we apologize for any of our technical difficulties. Don't know what's going on. But moving along to our Americans abroad, Christian Pulisic scored a goal in a 3-1 win against Bologna. Hold on. Uno momento. Maybe. Weston McKennie had an assist in a 1-1 draw with Liverpool. Hey, there he is.
Bro, I'm going to lose my shit. Like, I don't know what the hell's going on. I don't know if it's my internet. I am so sorry.
You're good. You're good. You're good. We never know what's going to happen here.
I know, but it's like at the peak of my excitement with what I'm talking about. So anyway, to your point, what you said is 100% correct. Having them play multiple positions, I put him in the middle. And what I found out as a coach this year, because he has to have the energy of a CDM in the middle of the field where he gets exposed if he doesn't have the energy to play defensively, meaning shut down space, make the tackles, win 50-50 balls, right? Mm-hmm. All that stuff off the ball, have the anticipation. He stepped up to it. Right? Before I had him categorized as somewhat of a lazy player. Not the case.
Yeah.
Not the case.
You know what? So I'm going to give you 30 seconds here because I know you're excited. If you're not if you're new, if you're not a fan of ours, Mike D's got a big game tonight here in a little bit. The Knicks playing the Celtics, so he's very excited. I'll give you 30 seconds to go off about the Knicks for a second. But before we do that, I liken this a lot of times to people because you and I always talk about how we can relate this to sports, basketball or football, things like that for people in soccer. This is like the kid that's really tall, right, in 5th or 6th grade. And in basketball, he plays underneath, right, scores all the points. But he's not skillful. He's just taller than everybody. And as we know with boys, 8th, 9th, 10th grade, all of a sudden, he's still 6 foot.
Yeah. Right.
And now he can't dribble because he's going to be a guard for the rest of his life.
Right.
You agree?
100%. 100% it's like that. And it's kind of made me reframe a little bit on how certain things are played. And you're correct in that sense to where understanding where you play on the pitch or on the field as far as how you have your line set up. So whatever you're playing, a 4-4-2, whatever it is, and that responsibility, being a winger and playing in the middle is extremely different. Like, and I think sometimes when you're in the middle, like for me,
totally
I excelled at playing in the middle because I didn't think. I didn't have time to think. I was more reactive. I was more like just in the game. And so for me, that worked. Like the way that my mind works, that worked. On the wing, I had too much time.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Your ADD kicked in.
My ADHD would kick in.
Yeah.
Right. And now I'm worried about like sagging my pants or like trying to look cool for the girl that's in the stands or whatever the hell it is.
No, it's a big difference. Totally different. And the game looks totally different from those two vantage points.
100%.
Totally different.
And you also, what I'm starting to find out, I have another player that took me 5 years to figure out that I put at center back. Certain players aren't necessarily like his technique looked terrible when I had him on a wing or I had him up top. He was one of those players that I would find a forward position because I wanted to hide him. I found a position for him at center back. He is amazing with the game in front of him.
Yeah.
Like his timing and everything. And so maybe simple nuances that if I'm just saying this, you'd be like, Coach, you did a terrible job not recognizing that. It's not that simple. Like you're playing with these kids' confidence and like understanding how this is going. And he's just, it wasn't as obvious as what this sounds like right now.
Oh no, been there, done that.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's part of the learning curve of being a coach that I love so much. Like every year is just a lesson. Is just a lesson. You know.
Absolutely.
Anyway, thanks, Jay. I appreciate you giving me.
Well said. Well said. So we moved on while you were gone for temporarily there for a second. Pulisic scored in a 3-1 win against Bologna.
An assist.
And I thought he did have an assist. Yeah, Weston
he did.
McKennie had an assist in a 1-1 draw with Lazio. Naomi Girma helped Chelsea women get a 1-0 win against Liverpool.
Nice.
And Johnny Cardoso for Real Betis, they're in the Europa Conference final against Chelsea. So you got the Champions League, folks. You got the Europa League, which is the NIT, as I like to refer to it. And then you now have the Europa Conference final.
And Betis is La Liga, if you missed that from earlier.
Yeah. But they're in the final, and he's an American player, so that's great. All right, first thing, one of our two major topics we're going to talk about is coaching. We're both, like you said earlier on, hot in the middle of the season right now, spring tournaments and showcases and games all the time. So quickly creeping up upon us is the tryout season. And you and I were talking earlier in the week on the phone about some other things, and we realized there are a lot of differences between the two places and the states that we coach in.
So Jay, actually, it's funny that you say that, because before we get into that, I recorded our conversation, and I want to play that for everybody about how we feel about club tryouts. But before we do that, please like and subscribe straight from the Craning Ground.
I hope this
make sure you check out everything on the Soccer Rebellion on the Instagram. Everything that we are trying to do is trying to make soccer in the United States more accessible and make it better for everyone, for development and everything that's going on. And we're here, and Jay does a great job trying to find the people that are really impacting the soccer culture and the soccer community. So straight from the Craning Ground, they're on Spotify, we're on YouTube, and we're on Instagram. So make sure that you follow and you like everything we're doing. And if you have suggestions for something you'd like for us to talk about in the show, please do so. Or if you want to leave comments, we will make sure that we address your comments if you are listening. So going back to, so me and Jay had a conversation about tryouts, and I recorded it. Just kidding. I did not. I just wanted to make sure that that was a cliffhanger before I went on my spew. But if I did, Jay, record that, let me tell you this. Coaches, we have conversations behind. Tryouts are not our favorite thing. We love the kids. Okay. I love seeing talent. I love a kid coming to try out and having a successful tryout. That's not at all what I'm talking
Well, if you look at our bullet points, right? The last one, pressure on coaches.
Yeah.
And I don't think people realize that when you and I are out there coaching, we're getting pressure from both sides. We're used to dealing a little bit of it with the kids and their families, but we're also getting pressure from the club and the group that you coach with, right? Because they're trying to form teams. Yeah. They're trying to make, are you going to have two teams in an age group? Yeah. Certain amount. Yeah. All these kind of decisions that are going on. So we're the ones that are kind of stuck in the middle. Would you agree?
100%.
But recently, at least in my experiences, I would definitely say since COVID, the tryout rules in my state at least have gone completely wild to basically there's no rules and it's like the Wild West. Whereas you were saying it's still rather strict where you're at, correct? Or there's some
Yeah, there is. So from my understanding, so let's explain what we're talking about. In Michigan, you have basically tryouts are all within the same week. So think about that from a player's perspective. That limits how many tryouts you can go to, because tryouts by a club, you have 1 week to do how many different age groups, right?
And you usually have more than one night for that team. So
right. So if it happens to fall on the same time as another club, or you're going from one tryout to the other and you're exhausted, so you're not going to have there's no benefit for the player. There's no thought in this is for the player. It's all from a business standpoint to get organized for the upcoming season. It has nothing to do with players being able to do their research, to be able to make comparisons, to be able to be thoughtful, to be able to put on their best show. And in fact, in Michigan, there is such a stance on what they call poaching that you can't even have a conversation with a player until this week of tryouts. Regardless of that rule, there are workarounds and how you have those conversations. And most of the time is you go to the parent and saying, talk to that kid. about this, which it's this big sales market. It's so much business that it makes me sick. It makes me sick. There are so many sales and promises because what a coach sees, to Jay's point, if I get this piece for my team, we can go to this level to get this much more status, to get this much more clout, to get this much more hardware. If I have this kid to fill this spot on this team.
But in Ohio,
go ahead.
It's almost the opposite, because now there used to be rules like that, similar rules at least. Now it's anything goes. So like you and I were talking, we didn't record it, but we really were talking on the phone about this earlier. You could send your kid to one of my practices, Mike D, in like April, and that could count as a tryout. You could say, hey, I want to train with your team, see what it's like while you're on another team.
No, that's not right either.
A different club, and I can say, oh yeah, you did pretty well, I think you'd fit in, and you can offer that kid a spot. Clubs still have regular tryouts, which will be coming up here next week and will be going on for the next couple of weeks, but there's no hard window, that has to be within this time frame. And it's just I feel like it's like the wild west. So then in my situation, you have kids kind of the opposite of what you said, going to all these different tryouts all the time, and there's no happy medium. But it puts pressure on the families. It puts pressure on, like you and I were talking about. There should be all this pressure on a 10 or 11-year-old kid, that's just just wants to go out and play soccer. But the bottom line, once again, if I had to point any fingers, is it goes straight to the top, because there's no rules, there's no regulations. If you moved to a different state, you should understand, because you've coached and your kids have played, you should understand the rules, and they should be the same. So there's no regulations. Kind of overseeing the whole thing from state to state, from club to club. There's different timelines. Some teams, I don't know about in your area, they have a fee now. There's a fee just to register and try out. Might be $10, might be $50, and it's non-refundable. It's just a fee to go try out. So it puts a lot of pressure on everybody.
So people that are listening to this, think about business as a whole. In what business would you stand for this type of predatory approach? To where you're saying that if you don't meet this timeline, if you don't do as I say, you're not able to grow in this sport. It is absolutely absurd. Absurd. And it's a feast upon what sports mean and youth sports mean in America to parents. It is a feast on pulling from that emotional string to say that, parents, I know you will give me your money if I tell you I have what's best for your kid.
Absolutely. And hey, I need you to make a decision by tonight.
And I need you to make a decision.
Absolutely.
I remember the first time I did a club tryout when I was like 24 years old and I was a coach, right?
Yeah.
How gross I felt.
Yeah.
Watching kids and judging them, I was like, dude, I feel awful for this. And I had for whatever reason, my age group, right, was a very attractive age group for the club I was working at. And I had over like 60 kids try out. And so we ended up tried to make 3, but as soon as you heard you're on the third team, you didn't want it.
Yeah.
So we made 2 teams out of it. And it was just, I hated it. it. And I had a DOC at the time that was just like, it's the nature of the business, and, didn't get into it, but try to make your best team. And I don't think that's necessarily wrong. I think there is, you want to create divide for competitional purposes. That's not what I'm saying.
But there has to be a better way. There's
got to be a better way to say that. And without saying A, B team, without saying gold, silver team, right? Like you got to think it should be in essence of a player's development. And in fact, when you have a kid like we talked about that is tall, so he's impactful, he still should probably go through some grassroots teams to work on the technique that's going to have that focus. Like
Yeah.
it needs to be. It needs to be. You look at a tryout. How is a tryout done? I don't know where you're from. For me, it's small sided games.
Yeah, a lot of that.
And
Yeah.
how many times do I see a kid that's terrible in the technique line when they're warming up, and then all of a sudden I see his speed, or I'll see something. I'm like, oh, I could use that.
Or vice versa. Someone has good technique, but they don't
Technique
stand
that's
out in the
all of a sudden
game.
doesn't right have an
Maybe they're
instinct.
shy. Yeah. Yep. No, I agree. But bottom line, there has to be a better way. And in my opinion, we need much more of a foundation from the top of youth soccer to make it more regulations, across
And that's a
across the
federation,
board.
is what he's saying. You
Yes.
need a
Yes.
governing party to standardize what's going on. And
Yes.
in my opinion, you should draw out tryouts maybe for 3 weeks. You literally give it that timeline. You make what's going on in your area accessible. You require certain information to be upheld. So after certain seasons, maybe records are demanded, red cards from the coaches are demanded, doing something to hold accountability so you know what you're getting into. Because the other part of this is, for me, you want your kid, the player, to play for the coach that's going to help him develop.
Yeah.
Not the team. The team is status, right? The team is status. Development is not about being on the best team.
I got a real quick one for you. The top 3 questions people always ask me at tryouts, Mike D. Who's going to be the coach? And I say people, parents. Parents always want to know who's going to be the coach, where are they going to practice, and how much is it going to cost? Right? That's what they always want to know.
It should be up front.
And yeah, and you need to be transparent. But like I said, got to be. We'll move along here, but there's got to be a better way. And so, if you have any ideas, please send them our way because we would love to hear it and we would love to discuss it as well. So, our big issue this week, Mike D, with the Champions League final coming up, as we said, Inter Milan and PSG are in the Champions League final. But we talked about this. You actually brought this up, and I thought it was kind of an interesting question. That's not our official sponsor, but I'm glad
Not
you like
yet.
it.
Working on it.
All right. Does winning the Champions League equal the best team? So what constitutes the best season for a club team? Is it winning the league? Is it multiple trophies in a season? Is it just winning the Champions League? And then as we have down there at the bottom, the treble is what's known as kind of the highest accomplishment you can have as a club team if you win 3 major trophies in a season. Typically, that's you win your own league. You win some kind of a domestic cup like the FA Cup or an Open Cup tournament during your season. And then you also win the Champions League. That's only been done 8 times in 125 years. About as much chance as my Cavs coming back in the NBA playoffs, Mike D. But that's another story for another podcast. But in your opinion, so let's say, for example, if PSG wins Champions League, does that mean in your eyes are they the best team this year in all of Europe?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that's what it's supposed to signify, right? I think that was the reason for that tournament. But as you and I know as coaches, the best teams don't win tournaments.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily, the honest way to do that was the Super League that was proposed, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like you have to play in a redundancy, like you have to play a lot of each other, I think, for you to determine that. Because it's any given Sunday when it comes to games.
Yeah.
But if you're looking at club from a perspective of that, right? And Jay, you did a great job with these bullet points because the treble, right? If you get all 3, that just means you became one of the more wealthier clubs if you win all those.
That's a rare feat.
Right. And with money, you can buy better product. You can buy better players. So in that sense, when you become a wealthy club, obviously, and each organization is different. Maybe that goes to, upgrading the organization with coaches and staffing. Great. That's great. I love that approach, or at equipment or whatever it might be. But what constitutes as the best club to me is from A to B to C, meaning from development to pro to winning championships. if we had some type of system that calculated what those rankings were, that's to me what would determine what the best club was. And development to me, because I'm a coach, I lean towards development as what means the best club to me. So,
Okay, yeah.
in that viewpoint, but from this standpoint of winning, like in an American standpoint, as far as teams go, yes, I think if you win the Champions League, you are considered the best club of Europe. I think you get to have those bragging rights for the year.
I would agree. I think. Well, I would agree. When you did pose this question, it made me think a little bit because I think it depends on the league. Like you always we joke around about Bayern Munich, but they seem to win the league all the time, and the German league, isn't as highly competitive sometimes as the Premier League and things like that. But I do think people have to keep in mind you have to qualify for the Champions League, like we talk about here all the time. You have to qualify the year before just to even get into it.
Yeah.
And we take for granted all the Barcelonas and Real Madrids of the world, but you have to qualify. So that means you had to have had a good season the year before in your league
to
even get into it. Then once you get into it, you have to play a little bit like what you said with the Super League. You have to play the best teams from all the other different countries. Then you get to the knockout phase. The knockout phase, you play that team once, home and away, and take the aggregate score. And it's more like March Madness on brackets. You move on, so it's an intense competition. So I definitely agree with what you said. I think that's the intention. I mean, the idea of the Champions League is to see who's the best team that season. So I think so. Yeah, I mean, winning the treble is an amazing accomplishment. I think that just shows your depth maybe of your team. That you were able to win 3 things like that in a season. But obviously, like we talked about, it doesn't happen very often. So. I would agree with you, I think, on this one. I think that winning the Champions League probably does because of all that you have to do to even qualify for it. And then everything, it goes on the entire season, while you're still concentrating on your league season. So, I would have to agree. Yeah. So
let me ask you this, Jay, for the sake of conversation.
Yes.
If you had to create a club, where would you have their focus lie? Like if you could start from scratch and you had money was infinite, right? But you had to kind of pick one place to start. What would you want your club to be known for?
I think I would want it to be known for the culture and the community and development, like you said.
And so when I think of that, though, I think of
Ajax.
That's
what I was just getting ready to say.
You know what I mean? Like
Ajax.
I think of Arsenal. I don't think of these champion, but I you know what? I probably should say Barcelona. I'm watching this kid Yamal play the other day, but I don't. But are they responsible for?
You should see
growing these players.
There's a great picture. I'll try to find it and show it on social media a week or 2 ago. They had their lineup, the picture before the game, and they had 5 or 6 guys in their starting lineup that they got for free at some point throughout the years. I think it was.
Wow.
But yeah, Barcelona is renowned for their youth system and developing their players. But
Dortmund, even Dortmand's another one, right?
Yeah, they're not in this list of Champions League teams, and neither is Ajax. I was going to say Ajax, just like you, but
and in comparison, so where I like the American system, right, and where I feel like it's more honest to competition. We talk about pro relegation all the time. If you look at the teams, let's talk baseball. Yankees, okay?
Yeah.
They're the best when it's farmed. When it's homegrown talent that they produce.
Oh, yeah.
Their team produces dynasties. And I think in American sports, because there is no pro relegation, that kind of affords that opportunity a little bit more sound than in Europe.
Well, like
because
tonight,
you're consistently at the top league and you're consistently getting talent that you can groom. And I think that's a big difference to where that's the advantage of not having pro relegation that's overlooked.
Yeah.
I just thought of that right now, so I don't know if that's fucking real or not. Excuse me, if that's real or not.
I was going to say, tonight's the draft lottery, right? I think also like the lot. So again, like our system of sports doesn't really allow for promotion relegation very much because we talked about before about, it almost promotes tanking and all those things because if you have a bad season, you get a chance at Cooper Flag now, which could totally turn around.
Which who won't be super impactful for 2-3 years.
Yeah, especially if you're on a really lousy team.
You know what I mean? Right. Right. And so you're
But on the other hand, in the soccer world, if you're Ajax, you have this romantic following, right? Because they develop all these players
that go
and then they leave your team.
Yeah, right.
But you can say we developed them, but
Right,
we're not in the Champions League. So yeah. So
I mean, because I feel like Chelsea has the exact opposite problem. Chelsea, you bring in players and it stunts their development.
They're like the Dodgers. They just buy everybody.
Hey, I love that comparison. Thank you for that.
There you go. All right. We don't have any highlights this week. That was our highlight. Team of the week, though. Team of the week is Barcelona. Our highlight of the week was Mother's Day. All right, there you go. Happy Mother's Day. But our team of the week is Barcelona. Obviously,
absolutely. Great call on this. Great call.
One of the most renowned teams in the world. But Barcelona, we picked, has to be the team of the week because, number one, they are 4-0 this year in El Clasicos, the rivalry game against Real Madrid. That is the first time, Mike D, ever in 125 years that they've been playing each other, that they've played Real Madrid 4 times in a season and went 4-0.
Wow.
They won the Spanish Super Cup. They won the Copa del Rey. They also only, as we said before, need 2 points from their last 3 games to win La Liga and just having a great season. So pretty remarkable. You think about rivalries, 125 years, and that's the first time that's ever happened. So Barcelona is our team of the week. Exciting team. And like I said, game yesterday again. I mean, it's always an exciting game. It's intense, but man, that game was unbelievable. It was 2-0 in like 10 minutes, and then it was 2-2, and then it was 4-2. So unbelievable game. So moving on to our
what I don't understand is why Barcelona played so high.
Did
you see that when you have that much speed on Real Madrid?
There was no defending in that game.
On that? Oh my! I was like, what?
I told you, like that game could have ended up 8-7.
Yeah,
I mean, it was just like
I didn't understand. It was just like they wanted to play tennis, like they wanted to just go back and forth. There was no defensive strategy.
No, there was not much defending. So, in honor of Mother's Day, our Spanish words of the week. I'm just proud of us both for at least trying to stick to our New Year's resolution. Happy Mother's Day. Feliz Dia de las Madres.
Feliz Dia de las Madres.
There you go.
Feliz Dia de las Madres.
Happy Mother's Day in Spanish. Feliz Dia de las Madres. And for our favorite time of the show, and I know this will be the highlight of everyone's commute on their way home. Errores.
Hello.
Tell us
before we get into
wrong.
any mistakes or questions you guys had. I don't do this too often, but I wanted to jump in on the conversation you guys were just having here on 2 different points. I've often found that the tournaments and the playoffs in any sport never truly show the best team. It shows who's the most hottest or who is the most informed.
Indiana Pacers.
If you really wanted to find the best team, you'd move them earlier in the season, mid-season maybe even, but then you'd have them at that peak position without all the fatigue and all the injuries in there. But along with that, Michael, you brought up development, and I think you skipped on something to where scouting and picking the right pieces is also a huge part of that. Yeah. So whether that's even in the farm system, you might not have drafted the player in baseball or whatever, but you saw a guy who had something that had the right piece for your team. So being able to build a complete team is a skill. It's a talent, and not everybody can do that.
Yeah.
So wanted to bring that up.
Like
the other thing
that
was along with development. You guys were talking about teams like negatively looking at being on the B team, where it shouldn't be that way because development happens on a different time frame for everybody.
Right. Correct.
You look at how many college players went in as walk-ons, not any kind of scholarship or anything, ended up becoming starters and getting drafted to like the NFL or something like that. I mean, look at Jalen Brunson. I know, I get it. But the guy was drafted in the 2nd round and was a backup. Now look at him. Because he kept developing and they kept working on it.
Clutch.
So I think we need to shade that negative side of being on a development team. That doesn't mean you're not going to succeed. It just means we found areas where you could be even better. So those are my 2 little editorials, if you will.
That's
nice.
great. It's good input.
On to your questions here. For the 5th spot, they will make 45.1 million euro if they get the 5th spot in the EPL.
Okay. Wow.
Something I did want to add to Jay with Pulisic here. He played in 31 matches for AC. He's got 11 goals and 9 assists in 2,224 minutes, which puts him tied for 9th for goals and 2nd in assists for Serie A.
Wow.
So probably I'm going out on a limb because I didn't research this, but probably the most successful U.S. player in any club
hands
over
down.
in Europe. So just throwing that out there.
Besides Tim Howard, yes.
I did reach out to your boy Carlo, Jay. He could not stay on for the podcast. He said we're running a little long, but he did give me a comment, and he said you should see the size of the Brink truck that showed up my villa. So I'm not sure if
Maybe
that's the reason, but I'm sure that was helpful.
I appreciate it.
Other than that, I have a couple questions for you guys. I like to do some questions for you guys. You were talking about rivalries. So in the MLS, what rivalry or matchup do you guys have that excites you the most? What's the one matchup right now that you would want to tune in for?
That's a great question.
Hell is real. Columbus Crew versus FC Cincinnati.
That is a great one.
All right.
So it's in city.
It's in state. So the Crew is a founding father, the original team of MLS. FC Cincinnati came along, was a USL team or whatever, and came up, and it more recently become, but they've been successful, so it's turned into quite a rivalry. Yeah, so an easy one for me. Yeah.
So I would have to actually follow suit there and say NYCFC versus Red Bull.
And what is the name of that rivalry, Michael?
New York.
The Hudson River Derby.
Oh, that's awesome. Really?
Yes.
That's what I'm saying. Like, they have stuff that I just don't know. That's a great name for that.
There was one thing I did want to correct you on. You said that
you learned something new today.
The New York, New Jersey Red Bull. They were actually the New York, New
Metro
Jersey
Stars.
Metro Stars.
I know that.
Yeah, the Tim Howard kits, man. The Tim Howard Metro Star kit.
You guys were talking about, players at certain heights and certain developments. Are there like ideal body measurements for certain positions?
Yes.
And do they matter more than the skill and talent? So my example would be an offensive lineman can get knocked down for having short arms.
No, I feel what you're saying. So it's a little bit more complex with that. What you tend to notice is a certain size and comes with a certain strength and technique and skill. Right? So what you'll find is the small, fast winger, right? That's 5'6", 5'8", whatever it is. But you'll start to see that kind of trend at where, he's got the quick feet. And when they're a little bit on the smaller side, what you find with that is technically they're a little better because they have better balance. So when you find a striker or someone or in the CB, so you want someone tall as a target player that can deny a center back, that's usually another target player that can win balls out of the air, that can hold, that can win from set pieces, that becomes a threat inside the box just based on his length. So you look for that. But it's not to say that someone that's tall can shoot. In fact, I feel like technique suffers the taller you are. And
Peter Crouch.
Yeah. But Peter Crouch is not that. Peter Crouch is an anomaly because of that. Well, okay, like you know what I'm saying? So that's where I think that's where you look at it. And this is where soccer is different than most sports because you're looking at most players being between that 5'8" and 6 foot range. Right? Okay. So you're looking at quickness, agility, speed as the biggest contributor.
And then my last question.
Jay, hold on. Jay, would you agree with that? That's a great question, Eric.
I would really only say, at the higher levels.
Keeper, maybe. Keeper's a little different. Like,
goalkeeper and center back. But, Cannavaro was like a 5'9".
I know. That's what I'm saying.
Won like the Ballon d'Or, and he was like a little 5'9" guy. It was amazing. But I would say, center back maybe a little bit, and goalkeeper definitely is the only one I would say for sure. You don't see very many, 5'9" professional goalkeepers like Jorge
Campos. If you look at leagues around the world, Eric, you actually like EPL is probably and Bundesliga, they're probably the tallest leagues. If you go around these other leagues, they happen to be on.
Spain's definitely not.
Yes, Spain's definitely not. Serie A might be a little taller. Actually, I do feel like they you can each actually tell I'm not going to say that maybe, but Serie A might be on the taller side as well, because if you look at Serie A, they're more of a defensive league, and volleys and or not volleys, but out of the air tactics seem to be a little bit more applicable, or it used to be like that. When Italy and Italian coaches in Serie A used to be a little bit more connected. That's kind of the knock right now in Serie A, is that it's not as Italian as it used to be. But when that was like the nationality, when, you know, if you look at Italian soccer, it's defensive minded. It's very much aerial attacks. It's very much winning balls out of the air. It's shutting down space with crazy precision. So does that, I hope that helps. I don't know
that does. It's always an interesting debate. I think
it's a great question.
Because even as I was saying with football with Lyman, it's like, yeah, his arms are 3/4 shorter than they should be, but his footwork is phenomenal. So like you can overcome some of those. So I was very interested in when you were talking about height on that. Now the last question, and this comes from the past couple of years here, playoffs of every sport I've watched, and I've heard an interesting debate about this. Does home field, court, whatever, is it still an advantage, or is it actually too much pressure now on the home team?
You want me to answer this, Jay?
Go first, buddy.
Okay. You're too kind. I feel like in America, but I can't speak for Europe, so that's a bullshit. You know, I feel like in soccer, it actually is probably the biggest advantage, especially for the underdog. The underdog has the advantage when you go to those smaller cities and when you're playing against, you know, a larger
smaller stadium,
smaller stadium, and they're coming in there and they know what's at stake. I think what depends on your fan base and how intelligent they are. If you have a team where you're popular, so your games aren't necessarily filled with fans, I don't think you necessarily have the same advantage that a smaller market team that has loyal fans. That would be my answer. Okay. I think it depends on how big your market is and loyalty of your fan base. Jay?
I would say in general, I still think there's a little bit of an advantage, yes. I think the home team.
Why, though? Why would you say that, though?
I just think that, you know, just being comfortable, having the support of the crowd behind you, you know, whether it's basketball, football, the field, the court you're playing in, the gym, the arena, the stadium, the majority of the fans, you know.
You're watching this NBA playoffs. That's a completely non-factor.
Irrelevant, yes, because the Cavs are terrible. The Cavs have imploded.
No, it's not just the Cavs.
The Celtics have lost 2 games at home.
No, it's
exactly right.
The interesting thing that I heard,
but I do think it's interesting, yeah.
And it has to do, somebody brought this point up, and I can't remember where it was, and I wish it was because I'm probably getting in trouble for not citing him for saying it. But he brought up about how just society and how we're actually doing all the right things for people. We're making, you know, we're changing rules. We're being more on top of, like, we don't want people to be so aggressive. We don't want, you know, people to treat people the wrong way. Is now, like, when you go into an away stadium, they're not as violent. You know you're going home. You know there's no issue. We're back 20 years ago in Philadelphia. They're throwing batteries at you.
Yeah.
You know, that's different. Now, so I take a couple of cheers, and guess what? I hit a 3-pointer or somebody in somebody's face. I send all those fans home. There's not a lot of pressure on
unless you go to Detroit Pistons game and they kick you out of the stadium for
but even
standing up and clapping.
They didn't threaten anybody. They just picked up a phone and called security 20 times because they were afraid.
Sounds like a personal experience.
It was.
I met Timothy Chalamet. We text.
He was great. Tell him Timothy Chalamet. Michael smells like him now. But at home now, you have all your fans to start the game, and they're super pumped and they're super rowdy. But the first time you start losing that thing, a lot of fans don't do the pick you up, let's go, you can do this. It's they turn on you. So the home court advantage is now a disadvantage because you're afraid to disappoint your team. So you play stiffer, you play harder because you're worried about the home fans turning on you.
That's interesting. Yeah, I can see that though a little bit. Yeah.
So
interesting.
You know what? I can associate that with Eric is sometimes as a coach, when I see my team making mistakes after mistake, and I realize they're in the rut, what am I doing is being critical. continuously trying to correct. Like, what are you doing? Like, it gets underneath me as a coach. Like, we just worked on this. Like, you know better. And a lot of that is in emotion.
Yep.
But so what I had to do is be smarter. You'd be like, all right, I got to correct the situation. And a lot of that is knowing the player and how to be able to motivate the player.
Absolutely.
But urgency as a coach is something I preach to my players in general. So when I see a lack of urgency from my team, I tend to bark. And I think more than anything in professional sports, when the fans see a team that doesn't act urgent or that the game matters as much as it does to them, is when the fandom flips on you.
Yes. And I agree with that. And I feel like that's every fan's right. Because
every fan, right.
There's only two courses of action as a fan if you're displeased with your team.
100%.
Or just not show up.
Right.
And let's be real, most of us are not going to do the second part.
Like the Knicks are a great example. Like when last game when they lost, they were missing everything. But I was still positive because they were still playing defense extremely hard. Right. And it's just like, all right, those shots aren't falling. And so I would, again, going back to a smart fan base, you should understand what they need, like the players need.
Yeah.
So Cleveland's fan base might not be the smartest.
How about that? But man, that's a whole different podcast. NBA playoffs.
That was a shot.
So
that was a shot.
They deserve it. They deserve it. So
Knicks.
They have had an utter meltdown. So, all right. With that being said, make sure you like and subscribe. Check out everything we're doing there on the soccerrebellion.com. This week, this Friday, ladies' night, correct? For
ladies' night,
Soccer Rebellion. Right. So make sure you check that out and like and subscribe. We appreciate it. Send us your comments. Until next time, Sunday Night Soccer.